Shields, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Alicia Baumgartner.
Sinisa Estrada.
Yeah.
They're my 5 top.
That's your 5 top?
They're my 5 tops.
Talk about the women's boxing game right now.
I think Clarissa has the overall
skill right now.
Man, she got overall. She probably know overall skill because she has overall skill set.
Clarissa got it all.
Kind of got the whole package better than all of them right now.
Yeah. So she's the face of boxing women's side?
I think she's the face of the boxing the women's side, and because of her weight class, she's been able to go to the higher weights.
She's been moving up, yeah.
And the higher weights is what's going to produce a bit more action because people think when you're bigger, you hit harder, which is true because you got more weight behind your punch.
Yeah.
So she gets more credibility for that.
It's lazier analysis than I expected from Roy Jones Jr. If moving up in weight makes Clarissa Shields the face of boxing, what does that make Amanda Serrano, who's been a champion at more weights than she has by and large? Clarissa's only been a champion at 3, going on 4 weights. Amanda's been a champion at 7.
Think about what he said.
Think about what he was asked. Who's the face of women's boxing? I would say
Katie.
that is split. That designation is split between 2 fighters.
Amanda.
Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, not Clarissa Shields.
What Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi are to soccer or football, as they call it, Katie and Amanda are to women's boxing.
Katie and Amanda cater to a larger audience than Clarissa does, and that is proven by the numbers, as this is a numbers game. Katie and Amanda generate more interest and more revenue with their fights. They make more fight by fight than Clarissa does.
And they're accomplished too.
Roy said that because Clarissa is campaigning at higher weights, she's in more action-packed fights, more action-packed than Katie Taylor's fights, more action-packed than Amanda Serrano's fights. Yeah, you must not have been watching these fighters.
You can't be.
There isn't more drama in a Clarissa Shields fight than what you see in a Katie Taylor fight or an Amanda Serrano fight. No, there isn't more action and there isn't more depth. She doesn't even fight as often as they do.
She doesn't.
Because there isn't more depth at the weights where she campaigns. The talent pool is tepid and shallow.
She's been out for about a year. Did you know that, Roy? That Clarissa Shields hasn't fought in a little over a year's time, where in that same amount of time, close to it, Katie Taylor will have already fought 2 times, going on 3. Amanda Serrano will have fought 3 times, going on 4.
She's nowhere near as active as they are in deeper divisions than they are. She doesn't generate what they generate, make what they make. So by what metric?
How was she the face of the sport?
She's about to fight Vanessa Joannese, and what is that going to do at the gate? Is that Vanessa Joannese fight going to do at the gate? Is that going to do what Katie Taylor did, fighting Chantel Cameron for the 2nd time? Is that going to do what Amanda Serrano did with Erica Cruz in New York?
What she was about to do with Nina Menke in the Coliseo in Puerto Rico.
If you actually keep up with the sport, if you actually follow it, it's not a contest. It's not a debate who's catering to a larger audience. It really isn't. So why are so many Americans, Roy Jones Jr. among them, playing this game?
And Stephen Jackson.
It's identity politics, folks. They want the face of boxing to be a familiar face, a face like their own, when the face of boxing doesn't boil down to who you have more in common with. It doesn't. It's all about the numbers.
And the sport of women's boxing deserves better coverage and better analysis than this.
It does.
Because this is a psyop.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You're repeating yourself, hoping that one day what you're saying will be true? Well, it's not true today.
It's not.
The accomplishments, the accolades, and the fanfare of either Katie Taylor or Amanda Serrano should not be marginalized to accommodate your personal preferences or identity politics.
The vocal minority you find online that claims to love Clarissa Shields but don't seem to show up to many of her fights. They don't show up in the numbers.
And how many of them can produce a receipt for what was Clarissa Shields' first box office fight with Marie-Eve Dicaire? All of these fans, since she's the face of boxing. Did you guys actually buy that fight? You know you didn't.
We all know you didn't.
It's a pattern here in America with the boxing community at large, in America and the American media, painting a picture of what they would like as opposed to what things are, what they actually are, how it actually is.
When they tell you that Gervonta Davis is the face of boxing in America, even though there's a guy in America that sells more than he does.
So because he's not an American himself, they don't like that, and they don't really like him. They don't wish to accept that. You accepting that doesn't change what things are and how it is. This is lazy coverage of the sport, not dissimilar to what I said the other day about Sky Nicholson and how they're always asking her the same questions about the same thing.
Because, God forbid, you should do your research.
No, that's not saying that Clarissa's not a trailblazer in her own right, or that she's not a good fighter, that she's not accomplished. She's all those things. But I do find it disrespectful how often other fighters are marginalized to put her on a pedestal for no reason other than the one or two things you got in common.
It's your identity politics.
It's nauseating. The sport and the fighters deserve better coverage. This needs to stop.
Just stop.
Ask yourself, do either of these guys even know that Clarissa has a fight coming up? Men's super bantamweight news. You may have heard yesterday that Naoya Inoue will take on Irish veteran TJ Dubois on September 3rd in Tokyo, as previously reported.
You can imagine there are a lot of people that are not fans of this fight,
as well as opportunistic critics that have been waiting for something they could use against Naoya Inoue. Irish southpaw TJ Dubois, who is enjoying a fine run of form, is set for an almighty challenge when he takes on undisputed super bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue September 3rd at the Ariake Arena in Tokyo. Australian-based Dubois, 37 years old, was a surprise IBF title holder at 122 when he outpointed Ryosuke Iwasa to take the title inside Tokyo's Korakuen Hall in August of 2018. He made one defense, halting Ryohei Takahashi in 11 rounds the following January, before the fairy tale seemed to come to an end in a unification fight with then-champion Daniel Roman 3 months later. Dubois survived 2 knockdowns before losing a majority decision.
a bit of history.
TJ Dubois lost his belt to Daniel Roman. Daniel Roman lost his belts to MJ Akhmadaliev, and MJ Akhmadaliev lost his belts to Marlon Tapales.
Marlon Tapales, who lost his belts to Naoya Inoue.
Naoya Inoue, who now faces the former champion TJ Dubois in what can only be described as a keep busy fight, a maintenance fight for a fighter who wants to fight 3 times in a single calendar year.
You may end up fighting a TJ Dubois in between the more spirited opponents and the more capable fighters.
TJ Dubois, who has subsequently won 3 fights in a row, all on the road back in Tokyo, and made a name for himself out there. Dubois' manager, Mike Altamura, recently told Boxing Scene he walks down the streets of Tokyo and there's people out there pointing, coming over for photos, wanting his autograph and saying his name. The veteran's popularity in Japan is likely one reason for this surprise shot. The other would be his favorable position in the WBO's rankings. Thanks to recent victories with the WBO Asia Pacific belt on the line, he's risen to number 2, just behind Sam Goodman, who would have been next if he hadn't decided to take on a stay busy fight a little over a week ago, where he ended up winning but breaking his hand in the process. Nevertheless, Sam Goodman could be next for Inoue if he gets past Dubois. Goodman is Inoue's mandatory but opted to take an interim bout, suffering a hand injury in a July 10th victory over Inoue. I can't say that. Dubois is also ranked 9th by the WBC, 10th by the IBF. The Ring placed him at 8th and is 10th with the Transnational Boxing Ratings Board. This will be Dubois' 5th outing in Japan, but for him to continue his unbeaten run in the country, he'll have to craft one of the biggest shocks in boxing history against one of the very best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport right now. I don't have any illusions about how this fight is going to go.
None.
Run of good luck that TJ Dubois has been having abroad. The buck stops here.
He's a success story, is what he is. How a veteran fighter might be able to revitalize their career, breathe a second wind into it by expanding your horizons, fighting abroad.
Changing your decorum, TJ Dubois is a fighter of Irish descent based in Australia, now fighting in Japan, set to take on the Japanese monster.
He's getting knocked out.
I don't have any illusions about what's going to happen when the opening bell sounds. Now, maybe Inoue, in the spirit of putting on a show for the paying public, maybe he carries this guy a few rounds, he doesn't kill him quick, but I'm of the opinion that if he wants to take him out in the first 2 rounds, he can. He can stop TJ whenever he wants to stop TJ.
The goal is to get Inoue out there 3 times this calendar year. He already got out there with Luis Neri. Next is TJ Dubois. If he wins after that, maybe it's Sam Goodman.
Or maybe it's MJ Akhmadaliev. Word from Japan seems to indicate that Inoue said he will not move up in weight until his body is fit for the featherweight division. He also said that he is looking to fight Sam Goodman and MJ Akhmadaliev in the in-between time. a sound course of action because I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's no name so big up there at featherweight, no fight so large
that Inoue needs to be in a hurry to get up there.
When I see how long David Benavidez has sat at super middleweight and how many years passed before he so decided to move up to light heavyweight briefly, when I see how long Gervonta Davis has been sitting in the lightweight division, having not unified it.
He's been there since 2019.
Whereas Naoya Inoue only moved up to super bantamweight last year, in the summer of last year. So why are we rushing him up to a fifth weight class when you guys don't have that same sense of urgency when it comes to them, when it came to David Benavidez or when it comes to Gervonta Davis?
Are you protecting Inoue?
I don't like the hypocrisy. I don't like the double standards, and I won't hesitate to point them out whenever I see them, that the American boxing fan and the American media wants to play with one set of rules for one guys and another set of rules for some other guys.
It's revolting.
Extending a special set of privileges for fighters that are nowhere near as ambitious or accomplished as Naoya Inoue, that you constantly place a burden on him while you let those other guys do whatever they want for as long as they want.
Much to the chagrin of Inoue's critics, it would seem that Inoue does have MJ in his crosshairs.
They've had a lot of fun the last few weeks accusing Inoue of ducking this fighter. They finally found something they could use against him, because at the end of the day, it's not even about MJ Akhmadaliev or that being a better fight than this one. They were just waiting for something they could use to tear him down. And when a fighter is as ambitious as Inoue, well, that's hard to do.
Why do they want to tear him down?
They don't like the idea that a little foreign guy, a little Japanese guy, might be one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport. To some, he is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. And the Americans are so tribal and so xenophobic, they hate him for it, for his ambition.
It's toxic.
Making outrageous demands that he should base himself out of America as if the Americans watch super bantamweights.
Or as if most American fighters have the same fanfare here in America that he has in Japan. It would be counterintuitive and stupid, but it hasn't stopped them from saying that he should come here.
Even though he already has. He's fought in America 3 times, fought abroad 4 times overall. I remember when Tim Tszyu came to America. He fought in Minneapolis at the Armory.
Which I thought was stupid.
And he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to leave his native Australia, where he draws well, very well.
To fight Terrell Gausha in Minneapolis, or Sebastian Fundora in Vegas.
So that as soon as he loses, and as soon as you have something to use against him, you can act like he was never any good. He's not a good fighter. He's just a hype job. All you're really doing...
Even when it's a freak accident.
You were never going to give Tim Tszyu any credit, like it's not your intention to give Inoue any credit.
It's not about giving him credit.
Like the criticisms aren't really about MJ Akhmadaliev or fighting him. What are you trying to convince me of? That you're a big MJ Akhmadaliev fan?
Stop it.
You guys hate everybody. So it's much to the chagrin of Inoue's critics that Inoue has that same MJ you claim he's ducking in his crosshairs.
So how much money are you going to put down on MJ to beat him, since you like MJ so much?
Since you think Inoue's shaking in his boots and he's scared of that guy.
What are you going to put down, big shot?
And finally, in men's heavyweight news, an update to a story we talked about yesterday, how 258 management recently made an inquiry as to why Daniel Dubois has not yet signed up for VADA testing, voluntary anti-doping testing. Since then, Queensberry Promotions has responded by saying, Daniel is enrolled as VADA will confirm.
So we just talked about double standards when it comes to Inoue. I feel like there are some double standards in play here, because if the shoe was on the other foot,
right?
And it were Queensberry making this kind of inquiry about Anthony, the media would treat it a lot differently.
The way they treat everything in association with that guy. This would fast become the premise, to accuse him of being a dirty fighter, a fighter who is doping. I've already seen people say that about that guy on the basis of what Jarrell Miller said ahead of what was supposed to be their fight. He accused Anthony Joshua of using therapeutic use exemptions to use performance-enhancing drugs and get away with it. But by now, we all know that Jarrell Miller was really just projecting. He's the one who tested positive ahead of the Anthony Joshua fight. He's the one who tested positive again ahead of what was supposed to be his top-ranked debut, that if he were talking about anybody, he was talking about himself.
So just because he said it several years ago, there are people who parakeet that Anthony's using TUEs.
That was never verified, that was never confirmed, that was a little more than just a baseless accusation that a known cheater made.
You're gonna take his word for it?
So think about it like this. If it were Queensbury making this kind of inquiry about Anthony, what would the attitude be then?
It's been a full day.
Haven't seen the story get much press, much hullabaloo about it, though underneath it all, we know what the implications are. The boxing community has mixed feelings about doping in the sport. Should it be allowed when so many high-profile fighters and known fighters at every level of the sport, contender, champion, seem to be testing positive for banned substances, to the point you start to wonder if the whole sport isn't doping.
Everybody's on something.
There is a feeling amongst some boxing fans that everybody in the sport at the highest levels of it is using something. So on that premise, why should any of us get bent out of shape if Daniel isn't enrolled to VADA?
Because of the double standards. If it were Anthony that weren't enrolled to VADA, what would the attitude be? On that premise, they would use that to diminish him, degrade him.
You don't need to be Albert Einstein to notice that the fight fans in the boxing community, they don't keep the same energy depending on who the fighter is. Depending on who the fighter is, they'll treat this like a stain on your record that will follow you the rest of your career. So if we're going to play that game...
It's taking you so long to sign up, Danny.
What's the holdup? What are you doing? What are you up to? This is why I always say, the sport of boxing can't decide how it wants to feel about doping in the sport. It seems a little more than just a weaponized accusation that you can levy against the fighter you already don't like.
Or if you do like the fighter, you act like nothing happened.
Like Ryan's fans have been acting with him, claiming that he's innocent when all the evidence is to the contrary. Though because of rigorous anti-doping testing ahead of a fight isn't free, it costs thousands upon thousands of dollars. People are paying thousands upon thousands of dollars to get the fighters tested beforehand.
There's something to be said about a fighter who's sandbagging it and hasn't enrolled yet.
This is a big fight. Big fight, big money, so there's more than enough to cover the anti-doping testing. All you gotta do is sign on a dotted line and let them collect the samples. That's it.
So that if for any reason they're unable to do that, well, it makes you look a certain way.